What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel. Week 11 predictions are continuing today with a top 10 showdown, at least the way it currently stands as of recording this video, and it likely will be a top 10 showdown when the college football playoff rankings come out. We have the Georgia Bulldogs. We have the Ole Miss Rebels. This is going to be a very, very interesting game from Athens, Georgia. One of these teams likely already solidified their spot in the SEC championship game. The other one is going to need some help, but taking care of business here is going to be a huge step in trying to get to Atlanta. We'll talk all things Ole Miss and Georgia in just a little bit, but before we do that, you guys know I got to say thank you for all the support the channel has seen as of late. And if you want to continue to show your support on the channel, hey, you can do so by hitting the subscribe button, ringing the bell, just so you know that when videos get uploaded. That's the biggest way to help support me. And the other big way is by watching the video, which you guys are doing right now. But there are other ways. If there are things that you can do, you can like, you can comment, you can share. Really anything that helps interact with the channel helps us support it. So whatever you guys are able to do means a lot to me. But enough about me. Let's talk everything Ole Miss and Georgia. Another big-time matchup in the SEC this week. We'll be talking about some more SEC matchups here in later days, but this one is obviously the biggest game in the SEC this week, and if not the biggest matchup in the nation this week, I'd argue maybe Michigan, Penn State a little bit bigger, but this one feels really, really big as well. Georgia likely already solidified their spot in the SEC championship game, but for the Ole Miss Rebels, you are going to need some help, primarily from Kentucky and Auburn to beat the Alabama Crimson Tide, but taking care of business here not only would put you a little bit closer to Atlanta, but would shake up the college football playoff race in its entirety. Let's go ahead and take a look at the stats both these teams have put up this year. Again, I am using their current college football playoff rankings. As of recording this, the updated rankings have not come out yet, so don't get too mad at me if you're watching this video at a later date. But let's take a look at the Ole Miss Rebels first and foremost, what they do offensively. This is a really, really good offense. They are one of the best offenses in the country. Maybe not by statistics, but when you watch them, they're very, very explosive. They have a lot of big play tendencies. And yeah, sure, they have some inconsistency issues, especially on third down. You see that percentage only at 36.3%. This is an offense that can score a lot of points, and it can score a lot of points in a hurry. Jackson Dart is their quarterback, a former transfer from USC, 2,467 yards, 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions on the season for Jackson Dart. They are led by a really, really good running back, too, out of the backfield, and Quinshaw Judkins, who has really started to find his groove, 793 yards, 4.7 yards per carry, and 12 touchdowns. We know Jackson Dart can run the ball, and Ulysses Bentley is a very serviceable option out of the backfield as well, and a phenomenal group of wide receivers, led, of course, by Trey Harris, as well as Jordan Watkins and Dayton Wade. So the problems with this offense come in the inconsistencies on third down and the trouble that they have at times protecting Jackson Dart. Now, is that also a product of Jackson Dart getting out of the pocket and he feels the repercussions of that? He pays for it, yes, but this is also an offensive line that's going to have to step up against the Georgia defense that's really, really good, also good at getting home. We'll talk about that later. But speaking of a defense that is good at getting home, while the Ole Miss, at least that left-hand column there, doesn't look as impressive as some other defenses this year, that right-hand column certainly does. You're forcing 14 turnovers and 31 sacks this season. That is a really, really good mark, 3.44 sacks per game, and it doesn't come from just one player. It comes from everywhere. By my count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players that have at least 3 sacks for the Ole Miss Rebels, and if you want to go further, 7 players with at least 2.5 sacks for the Rebel defense. So it comes from everywhere. You don't know who it's going to come from, but you have to be prepared for it to come from every which way. Those 14 turnovers, 10 of them picks, 4 of them fumbles. A lot of great players on this Ole Miss defense that just feels like week after week it continues to improve, continues to get better. It's going to give fits to this Georgia offense here in this game, who have really started to find themselves even without their best weapon and one of the best weapons in the nation, the best tight end in the nation in Brock Bowers. They played, for the most part, a really solid game against Missouri, and they did enough, especially offensively, to be able to pull that game out. So when you take a look at this offense, yeah, sure, the numbers are going to be better than what the Ole Miss Rebels are putting up. 39 points per game, 493 yards per game, and Carson Beck has really been slinging it through the air this year. 2,716 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Of course, his favorite target in Brock Bowers is out, at least for this game and possibly the next game against Tennessee. So what does he do? He goes to these wide receivers. I'm talking about Dominic Lovett, Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint, Ladd McConkey, Ra Thomas, and even the backup tight end there in Oscar Delp as well. This is still a Georgia room, even without Brock Bowers, that is very, very talented at the wide receiver position and is very, very sneakily talented as well, as the highlight of this offense is usually on the running back room, and albeit the running back room is doing pretty well for itself as well. Daijun Edwards has really started to find his rhythm on the ground. Kendall Milton has really started to find himself moving as well. And yes, while there still are some inconsistency issues offensively, and there still are some plays where it just doesn't feel like everything is clicking for Georgia, you're still one of the best third down offenses in the country. You're only turning the football over one time per game, although Kirby Smart would definitely like to see less than that. And your offensive line's done a pretty solid job of being able to protect Carson Beck all season long, as Beck has only been sacked 8 times, 9 total, because the other one was in Stockton, was in at quarterback. When you take a look at this Georgia defense, it's still the Georgia defense. Even though statistically may not be as good as years past, this is the Georgia defense that we know can still play not know that we can, but know that does still play a very, very physical brand of football. They're one of the best third down defenses in the country, forcing turnovers at a pretty solid rate, 12 turnovers on the year. And that pass rush that really has not necessarily struggled, but just really been kind of waiting to get going, finally started to get going here over these past couple of wins that Georgia has put there on their resume. A lot of great pass rushers here on this team. A lot of great defensive players, period, for the Georgia Bulldogs, and that's why statistically they have one of the best defenses in the country, even though the rush defense hasn't been there like it has been, or I should say hasn't been there compared to the way it's been there in years past for this Georgia team. I mean, you're still looking at a defense that's going to cause fits for the Ole Miss offense if they can keep up with the pace, which we all know that Georgia can. But it's time now for your what to watch for, your keys to the game, whatever you want to call it. It's just some things that I think you should keep an eye on when you are watching this one. We know how good this Georgia defense can be, and things are really starting to come together as Georgia is starting to play better and better football as the season goes along. While it hasn't all been pretty for Georgia, that defense is really starting to find their rhythm. This is a Rebel offense that's going to need to solve the Georgia defense early, and they're going to need to solve it often because this Ole Miss defense does have lapses, and with the way that Georgia's offense has been coming along the past couple of weeks, this is definitely a Georgia team that's going to put some points on the board. Ole Miss has got to do the same, and they got to do it maybe not necessarily quickly. You do kind of want to control the pace here, keep the Georgia offense on the field, be able to tire out this, or keep the Georgia offense off the field, be able to tire out this Georgia defense, so you can more so be able to work what you want to offensively. But this Rebel offense can go fast, it can go quick, and it can put up points in a hurry. We saw it do that in the closing stages of the game against Texas A&M. Speaking of this Ole Miss defense, they're going to need to step up, especially on third down. I'm going to go back a slide a minute. You take a look at that defensive percentage there. 39.3% is not a terrible number by any means, but when you compare that to the offensive percentage number, yeah, this is the defense that definitely is going to have to step up on third down, especially with the way that Georgia's able to convert these third downs, and given the fact that Ole Miss's offense has a lot of inconsistency problems on third down. We know Georgia's going to force Ole Miss into its fair share of third down and longs, or third down, and I'm not quite comfortable here. I'd like to be a little bit closer. The defense is going to have to step up big time on third down, and you have to hold up your end of the bargain. You have to hold up the physicality on the line of scrimmage. Offensively, defensively, this is a Georgia offensive line that's looked pretty good for the most part this season, but this is a very, very good pass rushing group in Ole Miss, and a Georgia defensive line that you have to be able to protect against. Otherwise, Jackson Dart going to be running for his life back there. They're going to be able to get back to Quinshaw Judkins, and this Ole Miss offense is going to be behind the chains more often than they are in front of them. When you take a look at keys for this Georgia for this Georgia Bulldog team, reigning back-to-back national champs. The ground game is going to work, and the ground game is going to move here, but Beck needs to take his big shots too. So the reason I say that is, again, if you rewind the video, I'm not going to go back in, but if you rewind the video and go take a look at this Ole Miss's defense rushing stats, the ground game is going to find its rhythm. It's really started to get going here for Georgia over these past couple of weeks, and the ground game is going to have a lot of chances, but this is an Ole Miss secondary that when you take a look at how many turnovers they forced this year, 10 picks, 32 passes defended. Carson Beck is going to need to be able to take his shots, and the ground game, while I did say it's going to work, it's only going to work for so long as this big defensive front for Ole Miss will eventually take over, be able to generate some tackles for loss. The pass rush is really starting to wake up, and I've talked about this a lot with Georgia over the past couple of videos. I have covered them in, but it just felt like the pass rush hasn't been there for most of the season, at least the way that it has been the past couple of seasons. Of course, we all know what happened the past couple of seasons. Georgia walked away with back-to-back college football playoff national championships, but the pass rush is really starting to wake up. They got a lot of guys that are very, very capable of doing a lot of very, very bad things for this Ole Miss offense. So if you are the Ole Miss offensive line, you need to be able to take control, but the Georgia defensive front, take control like you have these past couple of seasons. Now, let's start talking about my prediction for this game. The Rebels cannot be contained in full. This offense is just too explosive. They are going to end up getting their fair share of points on the board. However, when I take a look at this Georgia side, I think they're going to be able to put up enough points on this Ole Miss defense to be able to survive and be able to win this game. Ole Miss offense, yes, they are going to have their moments. They're going to have their explosive plays, and they're going to be able to score some points here in this game. I just do not think that they are going to be able to solve this Georgia defense as often as they need to, and I do not think that Ole Miss will be able to make as many defensive stops as they need to as well. Could I see the upset happen? Yes. Would I be surprised if it did happen? Probably by quite some margin. Definitely more surprised if Ole Miss beats Georgia than if Penn State goes and beats Michigan. I got the Georgia Bulldogs winning this one 33-27. I think Carson Beck is going to be able to make enough plays. This Georgia defense forces the extra turnover they need to be able to seal this game late. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Should be a fun one from Athens. Primetime game on ESPN. Hey, that's going to do it for this video. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. See you guys with more preview predictions and my rankings reaction, New Year's Six bowl game, college football playoff predictions, all that coming up tomorrow. We'll see you guys then. Goodbye.